So I will be talking on hematological malignancies and chronic kidney disease. So acute kidney injury along with chronic kidney disease is still considered one of the serious and frequent complications of patients with hematological diseases. And it has been estimated that around 8 to 10% of patients with hematological disorders with acute kidney injury will eventually develop chronic kidney disease on long-term follow-up. And it has patients with hematological disorders who develop have a worse outcome, and it is associated with longer ICU stay, lower complete remission rates, high mortality, and treatment costs. So, as a clinician, as a hematologist, we really dread that the patients whom we are treating should not develop this acute kidney injury during our treatment. And as we can see that the most common cause, Dr. Khaliqur Rahman had already pointed out that multiple myeloma is one of the most common causes for patients landing up with acute kidney injury and later on developing the chronic kidney disease, followed by leukemia and lymphoma. And majority of these patients of leukemia and lymphoma usually develop acute kidney injury during the therapy, either because of the tumor lysis syndrome or the tumor infiltration of the kidneys, thereby leading to long-term features of chronic kidney disease. Though the majority of patients do improve after therapy, but a small fraction, that is 8 to 10% patients, do develop chronic kidney disease on follow-up. So this was a large center study pointing to the epidemiology of acute kidney injury in malignant and benign hematological disorder, and they have in this analysis also analyzed that what is the percentage who are going into a chronic kidney disease. And what we can see that they analyzed around 480 patients in US, and they could find that these patients who were developed acute kidney injury, around 1/3 of the patients, 28.5% of the patients developed acute kidney injury during the treatment. And the mortality rate as well as the ICU admission rate was significant, accounting for 35.8 and 23.4%. So you can really imagine that apart from these dreaded hematological malignancies, these patients develop a second complication of chronic kidney disease, or it increases the acute kidney injury, increases the risk of mortality. And 8.4% of the survivors in this study later on received renal replacement therapy and developed a chronic kidney disease. So the main factors which were associated with mortality were presence of malignant hematological diseases, underlying kidney diseases, and occurrence of tumor lysis syndrome. So if we see that the spectrum of acute kidney injury and chronic kidney injury are a continuum of the same insult. So there, it was a beautiful cartoon that shows that there were risk factors already prevailing in the patient when we start treating the patients with hematological malignancy. And these are all the conventional risk factors like age, race, genetic factors, hypertension, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, which predisposes all the patients, not necessarily the patients with hematological malignancies, but normal patient, to chronic kidney disease. And on the top of it, if the patient develops an acute kidney injury because of any of such insult during the treatment, or because of some febrile neutropenia going into septic shock, or and maybe a massive tumor lysis syndrome, then these patients end up developing chronic kidney disease, and the outcome is seriously affected for these patients. The risk factors, I'm just talking about acute kidney injury because the majority of the published literature has focused on the acute kidney injury, and they have really shown that the patients who are going into acute kidney injury will later on tend to develop the chronic kidney disease. So the main risk factors in patients who develop acute kidney injury in hematological malignancies, the older age, the patients who are on mechanical ventilation, use of nephrotoxic medications or chemotherapeutic agents, leukopenia, hypoalbuminemia, non-fludarabine based chemotherapy, pre-existing chronic kidney disease either because of hypertension or diabetes, which is so common in our community, elevated white blood cell count or hyperviscosity, thereby leading to renal vein thrombosis, refractory leukemia, and post-allogenic bone marrow transplant. These are some of the risk factors that have been thought to be precipitating acute kidney injury in these subgroup. So this is a beautiful picture showing the various trajectories of which patients will go into chronic kidney disease. And you can see that the patients, majority of patients, because of different etiology, tend to develop acute kidney injury of different grades. So if you can see this line 4, that this is the typical pattern of patients who present with tumor lysis syndrome. So when we start the treatment, they develop an acute kidney injury, and then slowly with the treatment, these patients usually improve, and very small fraction of these patients go on to develop, say, chronic kidney disease. On the contrary, the patients who are having when we start the therapy and there is a chemotherapy-induced nephrotoxicity. So due to chemotherapeutic drugs, these patients develop nephrotoxicity, and these nephrotoxic agents usually tend to, the damage caused by them tend to persist over a period of time. So you can see that the tumor lysis syndrome is, there is a rapid reversal, while with chemotherapy-induced nephrotoxicity, the changes of the CKD tend to persist. And these are the patients that usually develop in a later follow-up the chronic kidney disease, or may develop a dialysis dependent disease. The third group is the patients with multiple myeloma or renal infiltration by lymphoma, leukemia. So they have a waxing and waning. This green line, you can see the trajectory. So these patients have a waxing and waning course. So initially they come with a high tumor burden, serious, severe renal failure. Then you give the treatment, you start the chemotherapy, they show an improvement. And then after waxing and waning, their diseases tends to relapse, then again go into remission, again relapse, remission, and then finally they also end up in developing the chronic kidney disease. So you can see that every patient who is having an acute kidney injury, the trajectories are quite different among the different various causes caused by them. And if you see the etiology for patients who are developing acute kidney injury with hematological, the most common cause is the hypoperfusion. Because of it's a majority of times it's a pre-renal cause. The patients come with you with a febrile neutropenia, with shock, with dehydration, and when you dehydrate them, the acute kidney injury improves, and it is totally reversible. And the second important cause is the tumor lysis, accounting for 43.8. Then comes the acute tubular necrosis, which can be because of the pre-renal insult to the kidneys, because of shock, hypotension, or it could be associated with some drug insult or tumor infiltration by the kidneys. And the other rare causes are nephrotoxic injury, HLH, direct renal infiltration, or UTI during the treatment. So for the nephrologist, because the audience is nephrologist, so I have just categorized the etiology into again 3 parts, which is the pre-renal, which is the most common in our clinical setup, which we encounter in and day out, is the pre-renal etiology for acute kidney injury. Though this has got the best prognosis, and most of the patients don't go into CKD if they are managed on time. So in the pre-renal group, we have patients who have a poor oral intake due to chemotherapy-induced anorexia, emesis or diarrhea, or sepsis, or coexistent cirrhosis or heart failure, or medication that causes this pre-renal acute kidney injury. In the transplant group, on the contrary, the reduced oral intake over to chemotherapy because of chemotherapy or the presence of GVHD or VOD can predispose these patients into go into acute kidney injury, and a small fraction of these patients tend to develop CKD. While the intrinsic renal causes are mainly the drug-induced or the nephrotoxic drugs which we give, as well as the chemotherapeutic agents which we give, and other is the tubulointerstitial disorders like acute interstitial nephritis or malignant cell infiltration. Some of the lymphomas like Hodgkin's lymphoma is notoriously known to cause the glomerular disease, glomerular involvement, and can present with MCD, minimal change disease, or the membranous glomerulonephritis. And the renovascular disorders can be caused by thrombotic microangiopathy, or it can be because of the extreme hyperleukocytosis leading to renal vein thrombosis. On the contrary, in the transplant group, we have again acute tubular necrosis because of the nephrotoxic agents. It could be thrombotic microangiopathy, which we do see quite commonly because majority of these patients are on cyclosporin, calcineurin inhibitors, tacrolimus, or cyclosporin, which we commonly give post-transplant, and they tend to develop. Or it could be acute tubulointerstitial nephritis due to BK virus or adenovirus. The post-renal complications leading to AKI and thereby leading to CKD are very a small fraction only, and it could be because of the extrinsic obstruction by the pelvic iliac by the bulky tumor load. Because majority of these patients who present to us during the initial part with lymphoma, diagnosis of lymphoma or leukemia, have retroperitoneal nodes pressing on the major renal vasculature or IVC in the mesenteric circulation, thereby impeding the flow, hampering the flow of these blood vessels. So it can also cause a post-renal failure. So coming on to the most common cause which we usually see day in and day out is the tumor lysis, characterized by hyperkalemia, hyperuricemia, hyperphosphatemia and hypocalcemia, and acute kidney injury if not managed on time. And the classic risk factors are the large tumor burden, high serum levels of LDH, extensive bone marrow involvement, and high sensitivity of tumor to chemotherapeutic agents like Burkitt's lymphoma, notoriously known to cause tumor lysis syndrome. And you can see that if we see the various hematological malignancies presenting as tumor lysis, the ALL as well as the Burkitt's lymphoma stand really apart, 26% to 23%. This is the series that was got published from US, and they have really shown that majority of these leukemias and lymphomas, you should be really careful, because majority of patients, if we manage the tumor lysis syndrome on time, then a fraction of those patients, maybe 8 to 10% of these patients, tend to develop CKD on long-term follow-up. So we need to be really aggressive in our approach in managing these cases. Then comes what is the pathogenesis. If we see that in TLS, we have the intratubular deposition of uric acid crystals. So there's a uric nephropathy and renal parenchymal and tubular deposition of calcium phosphate salts. And that causes the acute kidney injury in these cases. So the efforts should be made to decrease the serum uric acid very fast, either by giving a resburicase, or you can give a allopurinol, which is commonly used as a prophylaxis in all lymphoma and leukemia patients. The second important, which Dr. Khalik also pointed out, is the multiple myeloma, and we can see that almost 30% of the multiple myeloma patients do have a renal involvement at the time of presentation, and 15% of that group comprises of the patients with severe renal failure requiring dialysis, and renal replacement therapy lifelong is needed by almost 8% of these patients. So the cast nephropathy is one of the major culprits, and hypercalcemia, and it causes almost 80 to 90% of severe AKI in patients with multiple myeloma. The pathogenesis of renal failure in myeloma are multi-dimensional, I should say, multifactorial, because it is mainly caused by the serum free light chain, and it can involve the glomerulus as well as the tubules. So we can see, as Dr. Khalik really pointed out beautifully in his talk, that cast nephropathy constituting one of the most common causes for renal failure, followed by tubulointerstitial nephritis and amyloidosis, which is again the third most important, a very important cause for renal failure in these patients. And the outcome is really bad. If the patient presents with renal failure at the outset, severe acute kidney injury at the outset, at the time of diagnosis, the outcome of these patients has been very poor, as shown by different studies. The third important is the renal parenchymal infiltration by leukemia and lymphoma, and it is seen in almost 33 to 63% in cases of lymphoma and leukemia. We often do get an ultrasound done and we find a bulky kidneys, and sometimes we feel that it could be some arrhythmias reporting on ultrasound, but many times these are the tumor infiltration of the kidneys, and they can present in various myriad forms like flank pain, hematuria, abdominal distension, hypertension, and bilateral renal enlargement. And majority of these patients do tend to improve the acute kidney injury, tend to develop a post-treatment, but a fraction of this tend to go into chronic kidney disease. Then comes the important segment of glomerular disease and hematological disorder, in which the patient presents to you with nephrotic syndrome or some nephrotic range proteinuria, and usually presents to the nephrologist first, and when they work for them for for the nephrotic syndrome, they tend to discover that their patient is having some Hodgkin's lymphoma or other. So this is a beautiful chart I had taken from a review article published recent a few years back, and they have really shown that if you can see, the Hodgkin's lymphoma is very high incidence of MCD, minimal change disease, in patients and presenting with nephrotic range proteinuria, while chronic lymphocytic leukemia can present with MPGN. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma can also present with MPGN. So this is the pattern of glomerular involvement in patients who are suffering from hematological disorders. The fourth important group is the chronic kidney disease after HSCT. Suppose commonly majority of our diseases in acute leukemia, we tend to do the bone marrow transplant or the stem cell transplant, and many of these patients tend to develop chronic kidney disease on long-term follow-up. It has been estimated that around 20% at 5 years and 27% at 10 years post-transplant tend to develop CKD. So that's a huge number. Almost 1/5 of your patients are going into CKD post-transplant, and it could be because of multifactorial, because you are giving many conditioning drugs which are toxic to the kidneys, as well as you are keeping them on long-term on a calcineurin inhibitors, which either tacrolimus or cyclosporin, which can again cause renal damage and leading to thrombotic microangiopathy. And the median time between transplantation and development of CKD was as little as 191 days. So it is usually the patients tend to develop, some patients are so excessively sensitive to these calcineurin inhibitors that their renal function jumps when you start them on these drugs, because post-transplant you have to give some sort of calcineurin immunosuppression, and during that time we discover that these patients are constantly maintaining the serum creatinine on a higher side, and when we work them up, we see that they are having features of CKD. So this is again one of the important causes we tend to encounter in our day-to-day practice. The other important cause is the cytokine release syndrome, and it is one of the I would say not a very common entity in our day-to-day practice, except for promyelocytic leukemia, which APML, which common acute promyelocytic leukemia, which it is common in 9 to 57% of the cases, and in HLH. So these two common entities we have really seen in which the patient goes into severe acute kidney injury. And if you can recall that the doctors, the clinicians who have worked in the corona ward, they might have seen many patients of corona COVID, severe COVID, and developing HLH and going into acute renal failure. So that is one of the other causes that can cause this problem. The last one is the chemotherapy-induced nephrotoxicity, because we as hematologists tend to use many chemotherapeutic agents which are nephrotoxic. The most important ones are the cisplatin, cyclophosphamide, ifosfamide. So these are the drugs which we use day in and day out, and they can lead to AKI, either because of the pre-renal factors, because of the chemotherapy-related MSS, or they can also be intrinsic nephrotoxic to the kidneys. And these are the main reasons why some of these patients do recover post cessation of therapy, but a small fraction of them go into chronic kidney disease post even interruption of the therapy. So this is a small list I tried to take from one of the journals, and this is the cisplatin, as you can see, cyclophosphamide, ifosfamide, and they are acting on various mechanisms. It causes acute injuries, proximal tubular damage, renal concentrating defects, hypomagnesemia, salt wasting nephropathy. You can see that a single chemotherapy drug have various mechanisms, so they are so nephrotoxic. So and these drugs are commonly used in our day-to-day practice, because these are one of the lifelines in majority of our lymphomas and leukemias which we are treating. And cyclophosphamide, ifosfamide, and we have to be really careful. Methotrexate, the high-dose methotrexate is notoriously known to cause acute kidney injury and dysuria. So we have to be really careful and vigilant while managing these patients. So to sum up my talk, I would like to conclude that CKD in patients with hematological malignancy account for 8 to 10% of total disease burden. It is definitely has a negative impact on overall prognosis of hematological disorders. Majority of patients present with acute kidney injury during treatment, followed by persistence of CKD on follow-up. And multiple myeloma with cast nephropathy, hemolysis syndrome, chemotherapy-induced nephrotoxicity are some of the very common causes of AKI, which you tend to see in our day-to-day practice. And prompt detection of primary hematological disease followed by treatment is the key to successful management. Thanks for patientful hearing.